Namaste and good evening, friends. On behalf of AMA, it's a pleasure to welcome you all on this evening talk with a very unusual topic and a title, World Bank Marketing Tool for the West, and again also saying an insight of the banking industry. So let's see how this unfolds. We are fortunate to have with us Dr. Jitendra Shah, who will be talking about this, who comes with a very, very rich experience. He's now retired, but he has over 30, in fact, 4 decades of diversified experience in environmental and social management, facilitation and conflict resolution, climate change, social development, and safeguards, as well as outstanding record in leadership, innovation, and program development and implementation. He spent many years in the West. Of course, his education in the 70s, where he did his master's in chemical engineering, then his MBA, as well as his PhD, I think, in environment sciences. And then his career also in those areas, and that too working with multilateral agencies. His geographical focus is on developing countries, that's East, South, and Central Asia, over 25 countries, and the US institutional affiliation, multilateral development organizations, and he spent 17 years at the World Bank and 6 years in the Asian Development Bank, and in the private sector 11 years in US consulting companies. So as I mentioned, he has worked as the climate change advisor Europe and Central Asia with the World Bank from 2012 to 13, and the advisor in sustainable development at Asian Development Bank in Manila, that's from 2009 to 22. And prior to that, he had these consultancy assignments. And as many of you know, today, earlier, the perception about these multilateral agencies like World Bank, IMF, and many others was mainly, the Western driven. I will not comment on that. I leave it that to the speakers. But over the period of time, with more transparency, with people questioning things, a lot of things are being questioned today. So he will be talking about that. And though we, as usual, we have a question answer session, but Dr. Jitendra Bhai has mentioned that in between there is anything anyone wants to ask, you are absolutely free to ask it, and he'll be answer that. So before he begins, on behalf of AMA and all of you, I'd like to welcome Dr. Jitendra Shah.
Good evening and namaste. Okay. This is going to be my style, interactive. I will not let you focus on your telephone or any other thoughts. I'll make sure you listen to me. I have the mic, you don't, okay? So here, my first request and caveat about today's presentation. As you heard, first I want to know is who all are here. Because if I understand my audience, then I can tilt my talk towards the audience. So for example, how many are bankers here? Okay, substantial. Okay, so I have to pay attention to that. How many are from the finance background? Okay, bankers, finance, same. Okay, good. How many are lawyers? Do I need to worry about that? Okay, one person, that's good. How many are engineers? I'm an engineer, so I have a little bit of bias about engineering. Okay, how many are from the government? Bureaucrats? Very good. So I will be also focusing on you. How many are business people? Okay, good number. That's very good. How many of them are reporters? Okay, I can be free. One guy. Okay. I have to be careful what I say then. Off the record. Yes, off the record, right? And how many are academician? By the way, I love academician because I wish I can be in academics all my life. So much to learn. So I'm happy you're here. And how many don't belong to any of these categories, but are just curious? Let's see. I have a couple people who are just curious. What the hell is this? So I will try and take care of that too. So the first thing is, I want to know your opinion about, is the World Bank really an agent of the West, marketing tool for the West or not? So I want to get a feel for it. And then I will respond, my inside opinion, so as to what I think. So I want people to sort of tell me, is the World Bank marketing agent 100% or 0% or somewhere in between? And if you have any interaction, any personal sort of knowledge about why you feel that way, it would be interesting. So let's take a couple minutes just to reflect back from you guys, saying, what do you think? We selected this title to be exciting. AMA said, yes, we need controversial titles, so this is as controversial as you can get. नहीं नहीं अरे फेंकवानो तो आवड़े જ નહીં બાકી તો બોલી જ ના શકાય ના ના સીધા જ છે અરે सीधा जलेबी જેવા सीधा છે ના ના તેની થોડી તો કોન્ટ્રોવર્સી જોઈએ ને તો મજા હા સો તમને તો એડીબી ખબર છે તો તમે જ પહેલા બોલો એટલે પણ 50% 10% Correct. No, I'll come to that. I'll answer that. Tame?
What is the scope for World Bank so far as the Indian banking industry is concerned?
The scope is as wide as you can imagine. Huh? I'll come to that. I'll give you some specific examples of what World Bank does in India or has done in India. So the banking industry is now so wide. But go back to 47. Huge role. Huge meaning you cannot imagine how big. So we will get to that. Young people, what do you think? No, they are not agent. Is anybody here who thinks that they are 100% marketing tool for the West?
I cannot say 100%, but 50% I can say.
Okay.
They are typically looking for the underdeveloping nations
Correct.
who are not developed. They are helping towards the whole market towards the side.
Okay.
Next part,
So help me out. Why? Why do they do that? You're right. But why? On what basis are they trying to do this?
basically, dollar is the currency leading the entire nation.
It was not the currency in 19, when the World Bank was founded, it was not the dollar. It was SDR, and which is a basket of currency, which Americans didn't like, even though this is their idea. We'll get into it in the question answer. But what you're saying is correct. The answer is they want to expand the market for their goods and services. Who's going to buy Boeing plane? The developing countries, much more than developed countries. So their aim was, and to begin with, it was that. Anybody else who want to chime in? Please.
I think between socialism and capitalism, they are trying to make the world more democratic by their policy intervention or policy decisions favoring democracy.
Correct. Democracy is part of the vision, but is much more the economic terms of democracy, which is opening up the market. Same thing, but they are looking at the market. They are into money business. They are not into voting business. So America is interested in democracy. These international institutes are interested in opening the markets. Anil.
So I think spreading their economic ideology,
Right.
because they choose the president of the CEO or president of the bank. So it's the idea that capitalism, not socialism, spread. It's the idea
Correct.
of economic ideology.
Correct. That is correct. But suppose you are Adani. Your name is very close to that, Anil. So if you are Adani and you own the majority of the stocks in your company, who are you going to select as the president? You. So US has the largest stock in the World Bank. So obviously they're going to say, hey, I put in the money, I'm the boss. So anyway, so this is good. I'm very happy to hear your comments. Now let me tell you what I think. It's very similar to what he thinks, right? When I joined the bank, I was relatively young. So first few years, my initial impression was that they are actually acting as a marketing tool for the West. Because you look at the way they were dealing with things, and look at the way the governments also allowed them to do that. It's not as if they did it on their own. If you say to somebody, tell me what I should do, He's going to tell you what he thinks. And what does he think? His knowledge is from the West. He's generally speaking Gora. So nobody's going to question that. And now you have to go back to 70 years ago. So generally, behavior-wise, they thought they were superior. We thought that that was the right advice. So why should they change? If you listen to me, why should I change? Unless you challenge me. Unless you say, why? Then only I have to think and say, Salu, why? He's asking too many questions. So in the beginning, I felt, even though I was inside the bank, I could see the behavior of the people, and it was west tilted. But then over time, they hired people like me to ask these inside questions. Why the hell should I do it this way? No, I disagree with you. No, I disagree with you. Number one. Number two, they also got better and smarter because they started visiting these countries. The governments got smarter. Our bureaucrats got smarter. And they said, hey, wait a minute. What I sort of said yesterday, I'm not going to say it today. You have to explain to me why. You're bringing your consultant? No, no, no. We have enough good consultants here. I need you to hire my consultant, not your consultant from US. So we got smarter. They got smarter. We got exposure. They got exposure about our culture, our way of doing things. In China, in many countries, when they say yes, it doesn't mean yes. And when they say no, it doesn't mean no either. So you have to understand each culture and how this is done. Most importantly, if you look at the World Bank, IMF, majority of the staff are PhD in economics. So they are very much, and not necessarily micro, it's macroeconomic. So there are probably nobody around the world where you have 6,000 PhD macroeconomists sitting, and they're talking to each other. And their world is macroeconomic world. And it's very difficult to challenge them because you don't understand a word of what they're saying. So till you start asking them questions, you explain to them what you understand, they don't change. So slowly over a period of time, they have changed, and we'll talk about this, and changed for the better. We have changed, again, changed for the better. By the way, as many of you know, because this is going around in WhatsApp University, the new president nominee, Mr. Ajay Banga, is originally from India or Indian origin. Ahmedabad. See, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Phew, very good. So now, the title, next time the title of my talk is going to be, is the world becoming too Indian? Gujarati, that too. No, because if you look at the top leaders, chief economists, this, that, they're all from Indian origin. More than 1,200 to 1,500 staff, Indian origin. Consultants, Indian origin. So slowly, the mix is turning. So I'm sure our neighbors are complaining that we need more of our people in there. Okay, so I've explained to you what I have heard. By the way, for the reporter in the back, these are my personal opinions. I don't work at the World Bank. I don't speak for them. So if you write anything, make sure that these are my personal views and not the World Bank. Now, another thing is, he said, okay, we are going to do it interactively. So if you feel like asking a question, don't wait. Just say, I disagree, or you didn't explain it properly, or you have an accent, or slow down, whatever you feel like. But just do it at that point. If you feel like it, don't say, okay, I'll remember and ask at the end. Doesn't work for me. Just do it. Okay. This artificial intelligence is everywhere these days. So when, by the way, Mr. Janak, I don't know how many you know Janak Tanawati, I was visiting his place over breakfast, and he started asking me a lot of questions about World Bank, what do you do, why you don't do this, 1,000 questions at a time. And so I answered one at a time, and he says, I don't know many of these things. I think I will talk to AMA, and I'll request them to have a talk, because if I don't know many of these things, I think the audience also would love to hear. So thank you, Janak, for initiating that. So when I was preparing this, by the way, I've never given this talk per se, because I'm in a technical background, so I generally talk about a project or a specific activity, but this is an interesting topic, so I said, okay, I'll prepare a presentation. And since everybody's into artificial intelligence, I said, okay, let me also give it a try. So I went to ChatGPT and I said, okay, ChatGPT, answer this question, answer that question, prepare my presentation. Sure enough, they prepared the presentation. So I said, wow, that's pretty good. And within 2 minutes or less. So I said, God, pretty soon I'm going to be replaced by ChatGPT here. Because slide number 1, 1, 2, 3, slide number 2, 1, 2, 3. So I looked at it. And this is what I found. The numbers and dates and activities are correct. But the moment it gets into interpretation, I totally disagree. Totally disagree. Now, there are several things, particularly for the younger generation, that I'll point out here. Why is that happening? Because you guys are the leaders of tomorrow for India. And this is happening because all the publication, all the stuff that is written on the internet is by somebody out there. So ChatGPT pulls that out. We are not very good at documentation. When I talk to doctors here, they said, I did 5 surgeries, I saw 100 patients. So I'm saying, this is this, this is this. I said, why don't you write all this up? He said, who's got the time? So if we behave like that, ChatGPT is going to behave like this. So you younger generation, please, 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 put your documentation out there on the internet, otherwise our opinions and our experiences will not count. Okay? So here is the genesis. First question, when and why the World Bank was created? I know, you cannot answer that. Other people can. When? First of all, when? When was this thought came to some smart people out there? Anybody take a guess? After Second World War? After World War? Second World War? Second World War? Nobody wants to go to First World War, I see. Okay. It was 1 year before the World War II ended. And why do I emphasize that? There are smart people out there in the world. And they were saying, okay, the World War II is going to end soon. We got bombed, we got this, we got that, we're going to shell the hell out of all these countries. Don't worry, we're going to win. They know that. It's the CIA of the world, they figured it out. So they said, what next? So 1 year before the World War II ended, they had a meeting in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, to say, how are we going to deal with this? What is the new world order going to look like? I want us to start thinking about what is the new world order going to look like and what is the role of India. We need to start thinking in a big way. So that's why I bring it up. It was done before the World War in 1944. 45, the war ended. Okay? And it was not for anything but 2 things. Economics, governance of the world. So how are we going to dominate? Nobody will say it this way. So I'm very frank about this. They wanted to dominate the economic governance framework for the world. So somebody said something about dollar currency and all that. No. At that time, the people were much smarter and not looking at just US. They had a basket of currency. That's what they dealt with, and it was backed up by gold. So it was very old-fashioned thinking. And the second reason was reconstruction. They were saying, we are destroying Germany, we are destroying Japan, we are destroying all these countries. Who's going to reconstruct and who's going to pay for it? So that's why the World Bank originally was called IBRD, International Bank for Reconstruction and Development. So it was reconstruction. That was a very, very big issue. Now in terms of World Bank, there are a lot of people are into banking. It's not like any typical bank you have ever heard. It's a cooperative. It is a cooperative of the members. And it started with 38, and now it's about 190. ChatGPT sometimes says 189, but somewhere there, 180, 190. So it's a cooperative. And what is important about the cooperative is this. The World Bank says, you cannot sue me. Because if you sue me, 190 countries, everybody will start suing me. How the hell am I going to do any work? Because no matter what, we will take up controversial projects. So that's another thing. World Bank doesn't do anything easy. So when we started borrowing, say in 47, and we will talk about this, we probably started with relatively easy things. But as soon as, say, for example, they might help develop a refinery. But after one or two, they said, no, no need. We are not going to do that anymore. You know how to do it. Your local banks can fund it. We have explained to them what are the risks, what are the benefits. Out of that, we will go on to the next thing, on to the next thing. So we are always taking on a challenge. And if you start suing us for everything, that's not going to work. And besides, who are you suing? We are all a cooperative. We are suing ourselves. So how are we going to deal with it? But to deal with that, they have come up with lots of different internal mechanisms, and we'll talk about it. So while it was formed, and by the way, IMF was the main reason for the Bretton Woods. The World Bank was an afterthought. It was all about economic governance of the world by the superpowers. And the two countries that were really into it the most were US and UK, because they were dominating. So they wanted to make sure that they continue to do that. So yes, they are the marketing agent of the West because it was their thinking. It was their money that they brought in. The first 5 countries who borrowed money: France, Netherlands, Denmark, Luxembourg, Norway. These are the first 5 borrowers. They took loans. And then Japan got into act after a few years. There was a need to be a few years of sort of cooling off before they brought in Japan. So these are the countries they borrowed first. So this is the genesis of the World Bank and how it came to it. Now I'll briefly talk about the evolution. So as to what happened. So reconstruction of Europe, very straight target. We got to fix Europe. Sure enough, they fixed it in 5 years, 7 years. Then what? Then it became IBRD, D for development. So they moved into more development, right? Pretty soon they realized that you're not going to get anything done in the world. Okay, somebody talked about economic dominance and capitalism. Capitalism is all about private sector role, because unless you leverage private sector with your work, you're not going to get anywhere. So they decided, because first it was IMF, so it was a separate IMF for short-term lending, World Bank for long-term lending. So IMF for quick money. We have seen the example of our both neighbors. All of a sudden the treasury says we don't have any money, so they call IMF, and IMF says, okay, let me look at it. Acha, you're not doing this well, you're not doing this well, you're not doing this well. They make a laundry list. You agreed to fix this? I'll give you a check for how many billions you want. So that's a short term, fiscal shot in the arm, so to speak. The World Bank is completely opposite. Long-term thinking, long-term projects, and always difficult projects, nothing simple. So the private sector had to come in. Because it's a cooperative. Okay, no, I can get closer. The problem is I'll walk around, so it will. No. If you have a collar mic, it's better for me. So because then I'm looking here, there, stuff like that.
It's your style.
So the private sector, what they did was, they created a new institution called IFC. And their job is to only worry about lending to private sector. Chalta hai kya? Acha. How is this? Better? Good. So they said, okay, the private sector is too damn important for us to ignore. So they started a new sort of institution called IFC. And then they, instead of calling it World Bank, they started calling it World Bank Group. So it's a group of institution within the World Bank, and that was very, very important and did a very good job. By the way, IFC makes tons of money. They are very, very smart people. They started investing in IT companies way back then, when nobody knew what the hell was IT. So they are always 5 to 10 years ahead of the curve. So I always ask them, why don't you tell me what's your next project? I'll start investing in that sector. They won't tell me. So comes 1960, 10 years forward, they said we have to focus on development and also poverty reduction. So slowly they changed their focus from reconstruction of Europe, Japan to poverty and development. Not that they were still not lending to countries who you think today are very, very wealthy. In fact, South Korea, in 90s they were lending money to South Korea like nobody's business. Because South Korea knew that I need to develop very, very fast to compete with China and Japan. So give me as much money as you want. They will take it. So they started, instead of loans, they also started IDA, which is if you are a developing country and cannot afford the regular loan from the World Bank, which is say maybe 2% interest for 30 years with 5-10 years waive off and all kinds of good stuff. If you cannot even afford that, then we will give it to you as a more or less grant, only processing fee of say 25 basis point, 50 basis point, things like that. So it's more or less grant, but there is a small fee. Then they came up with a pure grant, saying, no, I don't want your money, but that is for a specific purpose. So if say tomorrow Norway says, look, you were very good to me, I'm doing very well, here is $10 billion, but I don't want the money back, but it should be used for poverty reduction only, strictly. So then they said, okay, we will do it that way. Then they came up with a very innovative idea, which is guarantee. They said, well, you don't need my money, all the commercial bankers are sitting there, I guarantee this project. So the commercial bankers are very happy. They say, if you're guaranteeing, why the hell am I not, I'm not that stupid. I'll take your guarantee and we will loan the money, because then they will start lending at a much better rate for themselves. And the World Bank is not using its money to do anything but to guarantee. Today we have a portfolio of, yes. जरा जोर से बोलना पड़ेगा.
What are the sources of the money?
You are the smartest guy in the room, is coming in the next slide. As soon as I finish evolution, we will go into funding, because I anticipated this kind of questions will come. So there are 85 countries we are lending to today, and the portfolio is over $220 billion. And I'll ask you a question or few about this, so think about it. Now, what happened? Because we cannot be sued, a lot of people started objecting. So yes, I cannot sue, but you're not doing my project well, you're not taking care of environment, you're never consulting anybody, the people from the World Bank will come in for 2 days in Delhi, stay at Taj and come up with the project design and that's it, we have to buy it. No, that's no good. We want you to consult more with our people. And the external pressure came on the World Bank from the environment and social community that you need to worry about environmental impact. You need to worry about social sustainability. So the bank says, yeah, these are good ideas, let's do that. So in the late 80s and 90s, they started with all the environment related rules and guidelines. Stakeholder participation. This is a phenomenal issue. When it first came in 90s, ADB generally follows a year later. So Asian Development Bank is the smartest bank in the world. They said, why should I do the thinking? World Bank is doing the thinking. You write your laws, you write your regulation. Give me not a PDF copy, give me a Word file. I'll just change World Bank to ADB and I'll more or less sort of do it that way. So very smart bank. So stakeholder participation, and I'll take you a minute or two from you because it's a personal thing. Initially, when they forced me to do more stakeholder participation, I, with a couple chips on my both shoulders, I said, why the hell do I need that? You hired me as a technical expert, so you think that some guy out there in the middle of nowhere is going to know more than I do about a particular subject, particular solution? So I was invited to go to Bangladesh because they said we have a lot of pollution problem in Dhaka. So I looked at Dhaka, city, industry, this, total profile. I said, no, you're lying. According to my model, Dhaka cannot have pollution. You have nothing. How can you pollute? So they said, Jitu bhai, you just come here. So I went there and I saw, sure enough, there is pollution. So I said, yeah, this is something wrong. So we spent 2-3 weeks looking at the pollution, where is it coming from, why is it happening, this, that, put it through our economic model, technical model, came up with a beautiful report. And they said, "Okay, now you have to consult with people before we will sign off on the report." So I consulted and I said, "This is useless, yaar. I mean, what are they going to do with my report?" So there was a gentleman like you sitting in the front row with a long white flowing beard. So after the thing is over, he said, "Hobena, over my dead body." Finished. Nobody in the audience will say anything after that gentleman said so. Over my dead body, Jitu bhai. So all my technical knowledge, all my technical work went south. So I said, "Apne શું કરીશું?" Because I had a lot of pride in me that we had done the best work in the world ever for a sort of developing country. And then this guy says, "Hobina." So then I said, okay, the sort of meeting is over. Then I called him and I said, "Hobina keno." So then he explained to me, he said, "Do you understand political economy?" So I said, "I understand economics a little bit, but political economy, no." He said, "I control political economy of Dhaka. And I see that this is going to kill my people in terms of economics. Because you're trying to ban three-wheelers, they're polluting, this, that." He says, "I don't understand any of it. It's going to impact my people. I'm not willing to." I said, "But sir, listen to me for a minute. I'm doing it for your people." He said, "I don't get it. I don't see it in your presentation. It's all about this model, that model, economics, yeah, whoa, whoa, whoa." I said, "See, I didn't understand who I have to get to." So we said, "Fine, let's work together for a while." It took me 2 years to explain to him physically every single thing that we were trying to do. 2 years. We brought him to India. We took them to Bajaj plant. We took them to ARAI in Pune. And we explained to them what's happening in their lungs and how they are killing their own people before the public. 2 years later, he said, abhi kar do, Jeetu bhai, abhi kar do." So it is the stakeholders who dictate what's going to get done on the ground. And this was the biggest epiphany of my life in terms of understanding how to run a project on behalf of the World Bank. If I had never understood that, I would not be successful today. Accountability. Because the World Bank cannot be sued, yet you can hold us responsible through accountability, the inspection panel, where when you complain to inspection panel, they will figure out whether the case is appropriate or not. If they take up the case and when they come up with a verdict, it is binding. I cannot say no. The World Bank president cannot say no. Similarly, when I was at ADB, I was on the other side where I was the chief negotiator, a facilitator to resolve a problem of a particular project that people bring it to the president's office. It was one-way street. My communication to the president was, "President, this is the case, this is the thing, these are my recommendations." He cannot say no. The only recourse he has is he can fire me because I report to him. So the internal accountability got stronger and stronger at World Bank, at ADB because of these issues. And we'll talk about these issues a little bit. And now, in 2000, they shifted to knowledge and learning. They're saying money is not important. What is important is to bring knowledge and innovation and learning from one country to the next country. If we have figured out what to do in Bogota, as far as their, say, BRT is concerned, and if you bring it to Ahmedabad, let's just bring the Bogota people here and let them talk to each other. I know many of you probably know Mr. Keshav Verma, who used to be here. We hired him. So we find a good guy, we sort of steal them, so to speak. Now, you wanted to know about source of funding. So here's the source of funding, right? It is the largest source of development finance funding in the world today. Largest. But The most funds, actually this was going to be a question. Do you know where the money comes from? From the market. We borrow. We borrow from the market. We have World Bank bonds. So people buy World Bank bonds because they are the safest. They are the safest sort of instrument out in the world. Can anybody say why they are the safest and the cheapest?
Backed by the world's.
You cannot answer. You know ADB. Okay, so yeah, they are I think it will come a little bit later. Now, a lot of people think that because they can be agent of the West, the money is coming from the West. 10% of the payment, the capital, 10% capital you put in when you start a company or a big investment like that, that initial 10% was the only thing they have ever taken from anybody. Everything else is from the market. Now, a lot of people internally are saying, okay, US, you have a lot of percent, why don't I give the money and I'll take your percent? Nobody wants to give up the percent, ownership. Also, we make money from lending and advisory services. Many people don't know that. They think we only loan money. No, we make money by advisory service. Say, for example, Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia say, look, I have a lot of money and I got zillions of advisors. One guy says, invert this, do this, do this, do this. Everybody wants to do something that is good for them. Now, you come in here, tell me what's good for me. So we will, of course, charge them 5 million or more, and we'll go there and then we'll write a nice report and say, to us, this is your long-term strategy. And this is how you should deploy your money here and there, so that once the oil is gone, what are you going to do? So we do a lot of that lending and advisory services. We also make a lot of money with the money that is there. Suppose we get bond, say $10 billion. Now, before the $10 billion projects are designed and we have to start giving money, it might be there for a year. We transact that money and we make more money on that than actual 25 basis point on our project. Huge amount of, that's the real golden goose. And by the way, people who work on that floor, nobody can go in. It's lock and key. Because they are doing investments in billions, overnight money here, this. And I want to know where the hell you're putting money. Maybe I can put my savings there, whatever, $100 or whatever. You cannot get in. I mean, it's like a vault. So, yes. Bonds. Yes. Yeah, so LIBOR. So bond has a, say, LIBOR interest, which is your international basket, right? So suppose the LIBOR interest is 1.5. It was 3-4 years ago. So then we said, okay, 1.5 plus our thing 20%, 30 basis point. So we loan it at 1.9. So yeah. So it's always LIBOR plus. We borrow at a very low interest due to high credit, and we just put a minimum topping on top to take care of our transactions. Somebody's got to pay my salary. But we have lots of other ways to make money. And the bottom line is the overall interest is much lower than commercial, number one, and it's a long term. A bank is not going to give money to a project for 30 years plus. And with all kinds of saying, okay, you can take another 10 years to pay if you have a financial crisis and on and on. For many countries, it's the only option. No other bank, local, regional or international, is willing to touch them with a 10-foot pole because their credit rating is bad, there is no history of doing large projects, etc. So the typical process for the bank loan is to start. So the bank will say, we are going to do project X. And they will spend 2-3 years or more to design the project with the government. Remember, we are only financiers. The actual project implementation is the government, the gentleman sitting there. They have to deal with it, not us. We will give them support, all kinds of support, but the actual is their neck on the line, not ours. So we want to attract funds from others. we have a project design. And then as people come in, we might lower our sort of interest. And in some cases, we might get out and saying, okay, only guarantee. Because we would rather not use our money, which is relatively precious, number one. Number two, we rather figure out, let the country learn how to make project, how to finance project, how to pay back. We would rather make the institutions that are underneath all of that. So a hidden goal for the World Bank is to make institution. When I joined the bank in 90s, and I thought money was everything, and I was doing this, that, and the other. And one senior guy came to me and said, Jitu, yes, you're doing very well, but remember, your job is not to lend money. I said, really? He said, yes, build institutions. Money is only to facilitate, to open the door. Remember that. And I still remember, he made me sit down and saying, your job is to build institution, especially because you're dealing with environment and social issues that are very complicated, very tough. The governments are not going to buy it. And sure enough, they did. Okay, I'll get into World Bank in India, but it reminds me of a story. Indulge me. I graduated with my PhD in 1981. In 82, I came back to India, went directly to Delhi, knocked on Central Pollution Control Board, CPCB, and said, give me a job. I've come, I have a PhD in environmental pollution control, this, that. I think India needs somebody like me to fix the problem. So the guy says, job given. You have the corner office over there, the biggest office, because we have no PhD in environment. In fact, in the USA, there were no universities giving PhD in environmental science. So my university was a small, but they gave me that. So I said, that's very good. So tell me, what are the terms of references? Because I would like to reduce pollution in India. He says, stop. Stop. He says, your job is to take these applications, they come in, you put a stamp on it, and you said, pass. I said, yeah, this is not good. So I'm a rubber stamp. He said, what do you think Environment Ministry is for? I said, to control the environment. He said, no, to support the industrial process. And these are the words at the biggest officer. They said, we don't want control. This is 81. I said, thank you very much. I don't need the job. The consulting company was saying, Jitu, yaar, वापस आ जाओ, आपको green card दे देंगे, सब कुछ करेंगे, तुम वापस आ जाओ. And they processed my green card because in those days, they said to get an environment PhD, it will cost us more than $1 million. So you giving me this application is worth $1 million to me. Approved. So what I'm saying is that I genuinely wanted to come back to India in those days. And they said, no, we are not ready for you. The government was not ready, the industry was not ready, and I was not going to do no rubber stamp. Okay. India became member in 47. So why not in 44? When this World Bank and IMF were formed? Anybody? Exactly. There was no India. We were under British rules. So the moment we got our independence, I think within a month or two, they became the member. And they said, not only member, we want substantial stake. So they got 2.9%, which is 8th largest. It's not bad. Because obviously the top people said, hey, wait a minute, we're going to take our chunk. India is the biggest borrower today of the World Bank, $100+ billion. Now guess who is the second biggest? Anybody? China is a good guess. Pakistan is a good guess, but not a good guess. I'll explain to you why. Pakistan economy is not that big that they can borrow 100 billion. So you got to think about size of the economy. Who? No, US doesn't borrow. US gives money. US says, see, the countries like US and the Europe and Japan, they borrowed in whatever early days, but US never borrowed. UK never borrowed. Brazil is a good, and it's actually true. Brazil is probably the third largest. Who is the second largest? Russia, no, small. South Africa, again, small in terms of. Bangladesh is a good guess, but it's again relatively small because the population is small. Indonesia, because of the population and the economy, Indonesia is the second largest, then Brazil, and then maybe China, and on and on and on. But it's very interesting. I didn't know all these things myself. Now for India, we have done 930 projects since 1949. 930 projects. So if all the government bureaucrats are not thinking that they are agent of the West, they are getting something out of it. From 47 to today, the first project was for the railways. Why? Because we wanted to make sure the railways expand. So infrastructure. The bank is always been one thing, infrastructure. You cannot do any expansion, you cannot grow without infrastructure. Now, as we said, there are 1200 plus staff with Indian origin, like me. There are consultants, smart people. They're over there. They're doing lots of work. And now the WhatsApp University is calling it to be renamed. The World Bank should be Overseas Bank of India. I mean, that's what is going on in Warsaw. They list 20 people, the top people. This, the president nominee is this and this and this and this and this. I said, wow, there are a lot of us out there. It's true.
How many people are employed in the World Bank?
Probably 12 to 15,000. Yeah. And we have offices in, I think, how many offices do we have? I knew somebody will ask me that, so 136 offices around the world. 136. Out of one, because the US has the main thing, But like, for example, they have an office in UK, office in France. It's more liaison. When they want money, when they issue bond, somebody's going to handhold and sort of convince them that, yeah, it's not much money, but please put some money. Excuse me. Okay, interesting. How many people want to talk about Narmada Dam project? Oh, only some of you. Okay, the rest of you can close your ears and eyes. We will talk about it. I have a question for you. In your opinion, is Narmada Dam project successful or not? Okay, so you can say a bit louder. Very successful! Because if that's what your opinion is, I want to hear it. That's better. So, yes, but I'm coming to that. I'll come to that. Will those alternatives be better than Narmada? That is the question. And I don't have an answer because you guys are much more knowledgeable about that than I am. But I can only explain to you the process from the inside, right? So you guys agree it's successful. Now, what does ChatGPT say? What does the World Bank report say? What does the Indian report say? But before that, okay, they say that is marginally successful. Why? It goes back to what I said. ChatGPT goes to what is published out there. So our NGOs, international NGOs, they have written tons and tons of criticism. That was horrible, it replaced so many people, they didn't give them a proper housing, and on and on and on and on and on. The list goes on. So what happens? ChatGPT looks at all that and says, questionable. There are some people who say that there were alternatives available. The World Bank spends a phenomenal amount of time looking at the options. Phenomenal amount of time. Just because I say do this, they don't do it. Why? Because there are 6,000 PhD economics, macroeconomics. They will say, G2, no, I'm not going to buy this. Just because you say it's a nice thing to do. Come back with the numbers. Even when we go to countries like South American countries, they have done wonderful projects in environment. The guys will say, it's a wonderful title, it's a good project, but put it in economic terms. Unless you can tell me that this is economically sound, better than anything else, I will not put my signature on it. So these guys are very powerful. You might have a good idea, but they're not going to do that. Now, what was good about Narmada, from my point of view, because I saw it from inside. I was just hired there in 1991. I saw that Namrata project was kicking and in the design phase since early 80s. Early 80s. So as to what we're going to do about water issue 50 years down the line. 50 years down the line. Then people talked about different projects, this project, that project. Narmada was chosen. Around the same time, they were looking at Nepal, Arun Dam or some such name, I forget. But so they were looking at it, they were designing it, they were helping the government, they were helping the researchers figure out how to do it well. They thought they had it well in 85. They applied for the money, $300 million, I think, 100 million at a low interest rate and 200 at a regular. So 300 million in 85 was a lot of money. The World Bank said, good idea, do it. They started constructing. About half of it got constructed and a lot of people objected. Without naming names, they started causing a lot of ruckus here in Gujarat, in Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, etc., and Delhi. All this chatter was picked up by Washington, and there are people around the world, they don't want any dams at all in developing countries. So I said, wait a minute guys, show me one developed country. Show me one developed country that has come up without a hydropower dam. You don't want us to have a dam. You don't want us to have a coal power plant. There was no solar, there was no wind at that time. What do you want me to do? Not develop. So these are the issues that our local NGOs and international NGOs refuse to understand or answer. So the World Bank went ahead. Comes 1993, 94, all these issues became big. Morchas in Washington, DC, closed the World Bank. 50 years is enough, and on and on. So there was a lot of pressure. So the World Bank had hired people like me and the social development people to say, what do you think? And we said, okay, if you go according to our guidelines, which are not laws, guidelines, we are falling short, meeting our own internal expectations. Because we are saying that everybody who needs to be resettled has to be resettled to this level. Right? So the government of Gujarat says, yeah, maybe we can do it, but then other governments, whether it's Maharashtra or Madhya Pradesh or Delhi, said, hey, wait a minute. You start doing that, you're going to start setting a precedent. Okay, now we have to start doing things at this level. And the economic implications for a developing country are not acceptable. So then they met. I'm sure they met over a couple of drinks somewhere. And they said, look, the best solution is you get the hell out of here. You've already paid 85% of the money. We've already built 85% of the dam. We don't need you anymore. सब काम तो हो गया, strategy हो गई, planning हो गया, execution हो गया. If you get out of here, then a lot of the chatter will subside. Sure enough, all the chatter in Washington went away, because any chatter, he'll get up and say, we are no longer part of the project. Finish. What are you going to do? The reporter, what are you going to do? You cannot ask me any more questions. I'm saying, bhai, हमने बंद कर दिया. We agree with you. We agree. Horrible project. बंद कर दिया. चला. So that's what we had to do. But the bottom line was we were there to support institution building. So we exited in 95, but we created many supporting projects. Water, agriculture, irrigation, etc. in Gujarat. Saying, bhai, yaar, you do the difficult job, fine, pani leke aao, but I'll make sure that it goes everywhere. So the basic bottom line is we don't shy away from controversy, we finagle it. So this is a typical example of a complex project. So other complex projects, I'm looking at the time and I need to have you guys give some time for questions. There is a West Africa project for 13 different countries, 2010. Narmada project, 1995 we shut off. So it's not as if we are not taking complicated projects. Even today, if it's a project, 13 countries, trying to bring them together to talk about it, very difficult. Rural electrification, Ethiopia. Because these countries, talking about 2018, lots of political conflict, lots of instability, and yet we go there because renewable energy is going to be important. So we must be there. Mumbai, metro rail project. You know how difficult it is to do anything in Bombay? Whew. Because you have to move people. There is no room. So the design, the planning, the construction, stakeholder engagement. Because generally speaking, if you give it to the government some money, they'll railroad it and they'll do it. But we said, no, you have to talk to these people. Let's figure out that they are part of the owners. So part of the institution building, that you need to talk to people. The Trans-Anatolian or the gas pipeline from Azerbaijan to Turkey and eventually to Europe. Not an easy project to execute. And I'm sure we will get lots of criticism how we have not done well. So here are the example of successes. Millions of people have been pulled out of poverty because of the World Bank projects and programs around the world. Now I cannot give you a number because poverty is defined differently in different countries. Right? So that's the first problem. It's a multifaceted thing. Number two, it's the government who's doing it. We are only helping. So to take the credit for everything the government of India or Bangladesh or somebody has done is also not appropriate. But we know that millions and millions of people have come out of poverty. Now this is something that many people don't know. We provide billions of dollars during AIDS and conflicts and disaster. Billions of dollars. COVID-19. I think India was given at least $1 billion, if not more. I didn't ask ChatGPT, otherwise it would have told me.
When you say aid, is it grants or
Total grant, aid, no money coming back. It's conflict, so COVID. So it could be COVID manufacturing, distribution, whatever it is. They give it to the government and saying, you just take care of it. It's a disaster, it's a conflict. International agreements like Montreal Protocol. How many people know what is Montreal Protocol? You don't count. Okay, one, environment guy, very good. So at least two people know. Montreal Protocol was designed and written in Montreal, and it was to deal with chlorofluorocarbon that makes ozone hole. Right? So freon is one of the ozone chlorofluorocarbon. Do you know, I forget the name of the professor, California, I knew him. He figured this out sitting at a bar on a piece of paper, probably the napkin, saying, oh, this could happen, this could happen, this could happen, this could happen, this. Oops, there is a hole in the stratospheric layer of ozone. There are this kind of smart people sitting out there. And he sort of figured out and he told everybody, the guys, this is serious. Just because you cannot see up there doesn't mean this is not serious. So of course America got involved. They sent planes up there to measure it, this, that and the other, came back and said, yes, the guy is right. He's not stupid. They designed the protocol called Montreal Protocol. They gave it for implementation to the World Bank, ADB, some UN organization, and there were very clear guidelines. We are going to bribe you. That was the guideline. We are going to bribe you to stop using chlorofluorocarbon. Now, in which economic theory there is a bribing theory? But that it is actually there. In fact, even for climate change, there's a Professor Patel, I think, in London. When we were talking about 10, 15 years ago in Delhi, at a very big meeting on climate change, he said, Jitu, all this is not going to work. Bribe people to pollute less. And I said, sir, you're an economic professor. I can't believe you're saying that. He said, yes, that's the only thing that works. People will not change their behavior unless you bribe them. Now, sometimes the bribe is a very strong word. Cajole, convince, push, nudge, whatever. But the bottom line is you got to push them into it. Incentivize. See, here's a guy who's worked at ADB. He can come up with all these jargons. Incentivize, correct word. So incentivize, kitla paisa apu, that's the incentive. So the point is that this particular protocol we were able to implement, and today the ozone hole crisis is no longer a crisis. Why? because the CFC production is pretty much zero. Everybody has changed over to other sort of alternatives and on and on. Now here is a project, it's in Laos called Nam Tun 2. It's a hydropower project similar to Apna Dam, Narmada, about 1,000 megawatt. The country's need is a few hundred megawatt. So why we said let's do this. This is what is making them money. All 1,000 megawatt go to Thailand, Thailand pays them cash. The country, when I started working on the project, was poor, absolute destitute. Today, phenomenally well, changed the face of the country, one project. Very controversial. We learned from Narmada how to do stakeholder consultation. We learned about the resettlement of people. We resettled these people very, very nicely with the government of Laos. We kept track of it. The international rivers people were objecting to it. We said, please be our guest, go talk to these resettlers. Because we had done a relatively better job, the government Laos had done better job, people said, hey, I'm happy. I got a good house, I got a nice plot of land, if it doesn't work, they put me over there, etc., etc. The bottom line is the Narmada Dam project gave us a lot of learning and we put it to use, and the development path of this is completely different. Education as an investment. When I first went to the World Bank and I saw that they were lending money for education, I said, pagal thai gaya chalo ko. How in the world are you going to make money? How are you going to get IRR, internal rate of return? But they proved it. All these economists, PhDs, they proved it on a piece of paper that IRR on this project is better than your dam project. So phenomenal. And bank is listening. They are evolving. Okay? There are lots of failures. I won't go over it because we talked about it. Now this is from ChatGPT. I disagree with it. I disagree with all of it. But I asked ChatGPT examples of failure. It gave me this. And I put a question mark because I disagree. So I've come up with a new slide. Challenges. The challenges are that we are still seen as agent of the West. So people have this nagging doubts. And I'm saying, yes, you should have the doubt, but act fast. Time is money, and that's something sometimes is missing. Secondly, we cannot implement projects. At the end of the day, it's government project, private sector project, somebody else. The problem is political cycle are very short compared to a project cycle. So next party comes in, the project goes on hold. And then the cost goes up and on and on. Same thing happens with private sector. Again, reform. We believe in reform. We believe in legal conditionality. It's a horrible word. All the countries hate us for it. I say that's the only way you will do anything. So we said nothing doing. Just like you heard about our neighbor. You want money from IMF? Here's a long list of conditionality. You need to reform every single item, otherwise we don't give you money. Need for long-term planning, political cycles, they don't match. Our bottom line is to institution at all levels and procurement. This is the biggest complaint people have. We don't want to follow your procurement. Why? Because you cannot give projects to your friend. You cannot give it to your cousin. And people have done it. And we have closed it. Okay, personal involvement before we get into the Q&A. I was hired to deal with acid rain in Asia in early 90s because I was like a Pantuji doing modeling about environmental science around the world. So, okay, do rains Asia or acid rain in Asia modeling and convince people not to pollute. 1990. Sure enough, we actually convinced people not to pollute. Because have you heard of acid rain in Asia like you have heard of acid rain in Germany, the Black Forest, the acid rain in Canada, acid rain in US? No. Because we work with all the countries in Asia, including China, including Thailand, including India, to reduce the pollution without taking credit ourselves. It was our model. We gave everybody the access to the model, but it was their execution. So Somebody sitting in Delhi took the credit for India, somebody sitting in Beijing took the credit for Beijing, etc., etc. Even the Makodi wants to hear this. Okay. The second thing, when they hired me for the acid rain, I said, guys, this is not going to take my full time. I will also work on urban air quality, because that was my PhD thesis, urban air pollution. So we started there in 92. We did it in 4 different countries around Asia. We worked in Bombay. In 1992, we have written a strategy for Bombay. 92. Zero implementation. So unleaded gasoline, we promoted that in 90s all over, including India. So 2-stroke engine ban. This was a big thing I learned in World Bank. How polluting are the 2-stroke engine. We were able to ban it in many countries, Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, Bangladesh, but couldn't do it in India. This is where the bureaucrats have too much pressure from all kinds of people, and it gets difficult. Montreal Protocol, we did that very well. Climate change program, I did a program in Central Asia. I also did a program in Philippines. Facilitation and negotiated settlement at ADB. That was my last job as the institutional settlement person. Personal lesson, I came from the private sector. I had my own company. I used to, before you introduce everybody and before they say what's your hourly rate as a consultant, you don't give the number. You talk about, I went to IIT Kharagpur, then I went to Georgia Tech, then I did a PhD, then I'm getting an MBA, and on and on. Why? Because you want to justify your salary. You come to the World Bank. They say, put your degrees in the drawer. Don't you ever introduce yourself as Dr. Jitendra Shah. No. You are Jitendra Shah or you are Jitu Shah. You show your work through your actual effect on the ground. If they didn't like it, you are nobody. If they loved it, they'll call you back. So it was very different working environment from private sector to the World Bank. Because World Bank is really, frankly speaking, the biggest group of very sharp-minded, well-meaning individuals sitting there, thinking about the world 50 years down the line, 70. They write papers about things that you cannot even imagine. When I saw them that they had written IT and why IT is going to be so important and invest in all the private sector IT everywhere. They made so much money because IFC actually puts equity. For that equity of 50 million, they got 400, 500 million. So, smartest and the most well-meaning staff, institution building is a goal. In my opinion, it's the biggest platform that anybody could have offered me to do the work that I learned in whether it was IIT, whether it was Georgia Tech, or for my PhD, to do environmental science policy in Asia. So as far as I'm concerned, advice is take the risk and do what you want to do in life, because for me this became my dream job. I could have ever imagined. So thank you, and we can talk about questions and answers. You get to go last. No. This gentleman here. Yes, I will ask you. I'll let you, but first others.
Sir, I am fortunate enough to have worked on a few World Bank funded projects when I was a consultant at PricewaterhouseCoopers.
Very good.
So my experience is that World Bank doesn't give away millions of dollars just like that. There are stringent conditions.
Correct.
And most of the conditions why we were there, just to ensure that the end use of the money is guaranteed. So, I will not get into details of whatever projects, e-governance projects in India and other Asian countries that we have handled through World Bank and ADB funds. My question is that you said that your recommendations on pollution controls, like maybe improving air quality index, or were not implemented. Why was it so? Because World Bank is an authority which can...
I should have asked you to go last. That's a difficult question.
Okay, sorry.
I will answer it, and briefly, so others can also ask questions. Trying to do pollution control in 80s was difficult because nobody believed in it. You need that common person to believe in it. Common person said, give me a job. I don't care. The more the stacks that are polluting, the better I feel. That the country is doing well, my city is doing well. Bhopal woke everybody up. But yet nobody was willing to do anything. They just woke up like a child. It took another 5 to 10 years to say, this is serious, fellas. So people like me were way ahead of time. Way ahead of time. Implementation is difficult for the government because they got pressures from everybody. When the environment minister is told by somebody higher up, saying your job is to support industry minister, what are you going to do? You're a political person, you will give the message down the line. You can do all the monitoring you want, but at the end of the day, industry ministry has to succeed. So it's difficult. But today things are changing. Probably not fast enough for me, probably not fast enough for you, but here is a real lesson. China is no different. I gave the same advice to China in 90s, saying Olympics are coming. Your Olympics are going to be a disaster. Please do something. We will spend millions setting up all these models and tell you ahead of time what you should do, shouldn't do, this, that and the other. No loan, nothing. They said, thank you very much. Jitu bhai, tame ghare jao. We know how to do it. And what did they do? Beijing was polluted like hell before Olympics. They had to shut all the industry down, I don't know how many kilometers, 50 kilometers or more. Every single one of them. People were told you cannot drive. So drastic measures. They do it with a heavy hammer. We cannot do it with a heavy hammer. Otherwise you lose your political party elections and on and on. Okay, you.
How do you compare China's development financing compared to World Bank?
There is no comparison. Different models, different aim. World Bank is a multilateral institution like a cooperative. So World Bank is a cooperative, so it's independent. It cannot take this side or that side or that side. China is Chinese money. By the way, do you know, how many of you know India gives lots and lots of money to our neighbors? Grant. And yet we don't talk about it. Similarly, China is doing this, but it's projectized. Their money to Sri Lanka is, okay, you don't pay me, I'll take your port. So it's very different. See, you cannot compare. So this is the problem. When we tell the governments that please understand the implications of who you're borrowing from and why. Why does say, for example, this gentleman here, he might agree that completely, but he will say, look, I have no choice. The messages come from upstairs that I do not want to go to the World Bank, I want to go to China. What are you going to do? He has a job, he has a family to support. He has to take the boss. By the way, at the World Bank, there was a gentleman who was a big boss of mine. He said, Jitu, if you feel convinced about something, object to death. Let them fire you. Even at the World Bank, they said, don't you ever give up. Because if you are believing in it, trust me, there are enough of us around here. And nobody will let you go. So somebody always had my back at the highest level. They said, don't you damn worry. Just do what you think is right. As long as you are 110% sure it's right. Okay, this gentleman.
So one thing that I have two questions. First is that there are so many projects from so many countries. Each one is important, each one is necessary, each one is urgent. How do you finally decide with your relatively limited resources in terms of allocation of funds and selection of projects?
Very simple question.
One
Very
question.
simple question. Good.
Second question is regarding the conditionalities. I was in Africa at the time that the IMF was giving short-term loans to Nigeria, and these conditionalities were very stringent. It led to a mini revolution in many places within Africa. So there was a thinking that unless you get the oil prices up, remove your subsidies, get your finance in place, etc., 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 then otherwise we won't give you money. You implement there, you get into a bigger soup. It's not about political. The country actually, gets deteriorated. Has there now been a change in the thinking in terms of the harsh conditionalities of the 60s to the 90s
Yes.
and now?
Well, both the questions are very good, but the answers are relatively simple. Yes, we have changed, drastically changed from conditionality. In fact, conditionality even internally is a bad word. So now they talk about policy reforms, but it's the same thing. The bottom line is conditionalities are good, but from early 80s to 90s to today, there is a lot more learning inside because they know that what happened in Africa, what happened in, say, Philippines. So the point is, they are saying, look, a stringent conditionality is no guarantee for you to do a good project. So they learn. They have people who come up with the nicer conditions, better conditions, smaller conditions, stage-wise condition, saying, first year I expect you to do this 5%, next year 10%, oh, okay, they haven't even done 2%. Then next year they revise it, saying, okay, 2 salmet 5%. So they improve like that. So they're a little more flexible. The first question was?
About the allocation of projects.
How
do you select projects?
Right. So we basically are very smart. We dump it on finance minister.
Finance ministry.
We said, we will give India $5 billion this year. You figure out which projects. Not my job.
No, I'm saying between countries. So
No,
five-
between,
five- 5 billion here
correct.
and 1 billion there.
All right, that's a long-term planning. So the long-term planning says that right now we are giving India 3 billion and we expect it to go to 5. Bangladesh is at 300 million, we expect it to go at 1 billion in 5 years. So similarly, the country allocations are done 5 years, 10 years ahead of time.
On what basis?
The basis is the country's ability to borrow, country's performance at that time, because economically the country has to be viable to lend. So for example, Laos, it was a big bet on World Bank's part to lend them $1 billion. But the Thai government said, I'm going to give them a check. Here is my check for the first year production. So Thai government guaranteed. See, so in the design of the project, you also start to see where is the inflow of cash coming. Say, for example, Narmada, 300 million in 1980s, huge. But we knew that once that water comes in, once it starts to do the agriculture, power, this, that, and the other, the economists are very good at modeling. They said, don't worry, IRR is 17%, down. So it is difficult, but not so difficult because the planning is done 5 years. So it's a very, very methodological process that goes on for planning the overall budget cycle. And it goes up and up. When I was there, it used to be 5 billion. Now it's 20, 30 billion is no problem because all the economies are growing. And the borrowing is good, people are returning money, etc. Now in the back, you over there and then that gentleman there. I think somebody needs to take the microphone there. Sorry, we are going slightly over time. So if somebody needs to leave, it's okay.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
First of all, very informative session by you. I had a couple of questions. First, what exactly do you do in the programs that you visited and that you been on?
Okay, let's take one question at a time. Otherwise, I forget the next question. Huh? So let's go back. Okay, my job in each of them was different. The first was a modeling job, where we created a rains Asia model for acid rain in Asia and convinced all the governments to sort of give us the data, work with them over a period of 2 years, and then give it to them and saying, do what you want to do. For example, in Thailand, we were supporting various power projects, coal burning. We told them it's a bad idea. They didn't listen. They said, show me the policies that says that I cannot do it. We don't have a policy for that. We said, but our model says this is going to be a disaster. They said, bad idea. We said, okay, go do it, but here's your power plant, keep this much space in between. Why? Because if you need a control system, it will come there. Next power plant, next space. So that's the condition we set through these kind of modeling exercises. Sure enough, the first year the power plant came online, the fruits had holes because of the acid rains. Next day, the government said, nothing doing, bring all those controls in. We said, no, you can do this, you can have low sulfur. They said, nothing doing. So people in the countries are like pendulum. They don't want it, to they want all the US technology to the hill. So that was the first project. Second one on the urban air quality. Again, this is advisory, saying if you want to solve a problem 10, 20 years down the road, here are the modeling, here is the report, this, that, and the other, and build institution to do that kind of work. Unleaded gasoline, give advice to the country why you should go unleaded, how important it is, what is the rate of return for doing it, the mental health of the children, this, that. So we are very good at putting numbers on cost and benefit. Everything at the end is cost and benefit. So that's what we did there. Two-stroke engine man was a simple, again, cost. Cost is minimal, benefit is great. Again, technical assistance. Montreal Protocol was project. Go to a country, reduce the carbon, chlorofluorocarbons, give them money for that, etc. And the climate change program is actual program, lending program to say, okay, you'll do 1, 2, 3, 4, for this we will do this, etc. So from the advisory services, slowly and steadily I moved into running the actual project for financing. And the last was sitting in the office and helping them if somebody complains and hoping that nobody complains, so I don't have a job.
My second question would be, what is so advantageous for the donors like America to give lot of money to the World Bank?
No, first of all, America doesn't give a lot of money to the World Bank. We get it from the market.
Okay.
So whether it's America, they're doing it because they want some interest. But America has 15% of the stake in here. Why? Because they want to sell goods and services to us. They want to sell the Boeing planes, they want to sell the consulting services, they want to sell airport building, etc., etc. Who's going to do all that? Who's going to build our first refinery? I'm sure it was somebody either in America or Japan or Europe. So they wanted, it was agent of the West, no question. The question is, do we mind? And what I say is, sometimes you need agent of the West. If you haven't done it, it's better that somebody who has done it comes and does it. Otherwise, you're going to fail. And when you have 100, 200, 300 million dollar projects like Narmada Dam, you better get the best of the best in the world to make sure your turbines are good, make sure your construction is good, make sure the cement doesn't have corruption in there. Okay, next gentleman.
Good evening, sir. Sir, as you just mentioned that India is the highest borrower from the World Bank, consider. So in future also India will remain the highest borrower, because I think the development kind of the lot of project is going in India. And what is the strategy for World Bank for India in further another for next 20 years?
Okay, the last question is easy. I have no idea because I don't work there anymore, and I don't try to second guess or don't go to the website and figure out what they're doing. I'm gone. History. On the first side, will India be the largest borrower? I hope not, for our own sake. The only reason I want India to borrow is to build our institution. So India should turn it around, saying, I don't need your money. I need your help to make sure our corruption policies are proper, make sure our financial institutions are strong, make sure that there is a cross-check on everything. So I want us to flip the table on them and saying, keep your money, give me advice, and for free. Somebody else in the back? This gentleman in red, yeah. By the way, you can disagree with me, it's okay.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
There was a LIBOR plus model previously. Right now it is continue, or I thought that there is a new model instead of the LIBOR plus while exporting.
LIBOR plus.
Yeah.
I don't know what is the latest,
Okay.
but generically speaking, LIBOR plus or the new model would be similar to LIBOR plus. The question is, plus is 20 basis point, 30 basis point, flexible. I don't know. I don't get into the macroeconomic side of the story. There are lots and lots of people. I get into this kind of stuff. Technical detail, technical assistance, technical projects, and I stay away from the economics. But I learned a lot from those economists. You must monetize everything. Otherwise, finance minister will not give you time of the day. Unless there is an exciting question, he is going to close the thing.
Yes.
Oh, no, here, this lady wants.
Last question, okay. You choose. Last question.
No, lady, because she has been patiently waiting.
Okay. This is a rare response. Okay, last two. Such an experienced person. Yes.
Sir, I have three questions. First is like how much World Bank... They are short questions.
See, smart people in this room. Okay, one at a time, otherwise I'll forget.
Okay. So my first question is like how much World Bank spends for research? How much World Bank spends for research and development and innovation, besides education, learning, and what you say, knowledge and all?
I don't have a number. I have to ask ChatGPT, but that
Just,
would be very good.
just, I mean,
but
guess.
approximately a lot of money.
Okay.
My first 5 years at the World Bank, I didn't do projects. I do only technical assistance, millions and millions of dollars. And if the World Bank doesn't give it to me, I go to Norway, I go to Netherlands, I go to Japan, and saying, paisa lao, I want to do this. And as long as you have a good idea, they will never stop you. So the money is never the issue. Ideas are the issues. Go ahead, next
So they
question.
spend a lot of money on what is innovation and all.
Yes.
Okay. Second question is like, to whom World Bank is accountable?
To who? The people who are members.
Okay.
190 bosses. I have 190 bosses on top of me. They used to sit on the top floor. They don't like something, they will pick up the phone and saying, Mr. Jitu Shah, show up. I have a question. I remember a country, one of our neighboring country. I stopped the loan. I said, you are not fulfilling the social conditions. Loan gone. Next day, I get the call from the executive director. You took my money. I said, no, sir, I didn't take your money. You didn't fulfill the conditions.
Okay, there's a reason World Bank cannot be sued.
Huh?
There's a reason World Bank cannot be sued because it's not accountable to an external party.
No, the World Bank is accountable to all the owners of the World Bank. So there is an internal mechanism, number one. Number two, there is that we talked about, right? The inspection panel. Similar at ADB. There are internal accountability mechanisms that are very powerful, much better than our court system. Trust me, these things get resolved like this. If it goes to our court, it will be 10, 20, 30 years. Last question.
Okay, sir, in brief, can you explain, I didn't understood this, like legal conditionality. What exactly is legal conditionality like?
Okay, I'll give you one example, okay? But there are lots of them. Or two, just so the two different ones. When we had a loan with Thailand, we said, okay, we will give you this much money, but you need to reform your power sector. What does it mean? You're not getting enough money from the public. Your production cost is 6 cents a megawatt hour in US terms, and you're only charging them 4. You're losing 2. You're bleeding. We will not give you money if you bleed like this. So please, don't raise it all at once. 4, 4.2, 4.3, 4.5, but you got to get your money out. Unless you can make it cheaper. That's it. Enough questions from you.
So it is standard or it is flexible, like?
Huh?
This conditionality is standard or is flexible?
No, flexible. We design. We are human beings. So, if I have some thought, I'll do it. Some other lawyers will do some other. Okay, Anil Dani.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Okay.
You mentioned somewhere in between that led into South Korea in 1990. Looking at South Korea's economy today, they are on one level. Why doesn't it replicate? Why don't you? Is the World Bank in a position to replicate that in other countries?
First of all, World Bank doesn't implement project.
Yeah. Okay.
That's the problem. That's it. One sentence. World Bank doesn't implement the projects. Countries do. So if the country like India wants to develop like this, World Bank will come with a shovel full of money. Just prove it to me that you're going to do it that way.
Has World Bank blacklisted any country as
Yes. Yes. And generally speaking, people default. For example, North Korea right now or Myanmar in between. They do default. But eventually, when they want to come in the world economy, the World Bank says, hey, money pending. So they do default, but it's generally small countries, and they all come back. Hopefully.
Okay. Thank you, Jitu Bhai. Thank you very much. Just take 1 minute to express my... I'm sorry, gentlemen, we have crossed our time limit.
Ask me afterwards.
So we have to respect everybody's time. So I'll just take half a minute for expressing our gratitude. I'm sure this complicated topic was explained very lucidly by Jitu Bhai. So big round of applause for him. And I'm sure a lot of basic but very interesting things came out of this presentation which I did not even expect. So this was very nice, and thank you very much for sharing your thoughts in a very, very simple way, and your the way you instantly answered the questions. It was a very nice tale. And thank you, friends, for your participation. This talk was very appropriate on the World Earth Day today, where AMA is having a lot of programs. You must have seen a lot of people today. So thank you very much, and keep coming to AMA. Jitendra, thank you very much.
Thank you all. Unleaded gasoline, give advice to the country why you should go unleaded, how important it is, what is the rate of return for doing it, the mental health of the children, this, that. So we are very good at putting numbers on cost and benefit. Everything at the end is cost and benefit. So that's what we did there. Two-stroke engine man was a simple, again, cost. Cost is minimal, benefit is great. Again, technical assistance. Montreal Protocol was project. Go to a country, reduce the carbon, chlorofluorocarbons, give them money for that, etc. And the climate change program is actual program, lending program to say, okay, you'll do 1, 2, 3, 4, for this we will do this, etc. So from the advisory services, slowly and steadily I moved into running the actual project for financing. And the last was sitting in the office and helping them if somebody complains and hoping that nobody complains, so I don't have a job.
My second question would be, what is so advantageous for the donors like America to give lot of money to the World Bank?
No, first of all, America doesn't give a lot of money to the World Bank. We get it from the market.
Okay.
So whether it's America, they're doing it because they want some interest. But America has 15% of the stake in here. Why? Because they want to sell goods and services to us. They want to sell the Boeing planes, they want to sell the consulting services, they want to sell airport building, etc., etc. Who's going to do all that? Who's going to build our first refinery? I'm sure it was somebody either in America or Japan or Europe. So they wanted, it was agent of the West, no question. The question is, do we mind? And what I say is, sometimes you need agent of the West. If you haven't done it, it's better that somebody who has done it comes and does it. Otherwise you're going to fail. And when you have 100, 200, $300 million projects like Narmada Dam, you better get the best of the best in the world to make sure your turbines are good, make sure your construction is good, make sure the cement doesn't have corruption in there. Okay, next gentleman.
Good evening, sir. Sir, as you just mentioned that India is the highest borrower from the World Bank consider. So in future also India will remain the highest borrower, because I think the development kind of the lot of project is going in India. And what is the strategy for World Bank for India in further another for next 10 to 20 years?
Okay, the last question is easy. I have no idea because I don't work there anymore, and I don't try to second guess or don't go to the website and figure out what they're doing. I'm gone. History. On the first side, will India be the largest borrower? I hope not. For our own sake. The only reason I want India to borrow is to build our institution. So India should turn it around, saying, I don't need your money. I need your help to make sure our corruption policies are proper, make sure our financial institutions are strong, make sure that there is a cross-check on everything. So I want us to flip the table on them and saying, keep your money, give me advice, and for free. Somebody else in the back? This gentleman in red, yeah. By the way, you can disagree with me, it's okay.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
There was a LIBOR plus model previously. Right now it is continue, or I thought that there is a new model instead of the LIBOR plus while expecting.
LIBOR plus.
Yeah.
I don't know what is the latest,
okay.
But generically speaking, LIBOR plus or the new model would be similar to LIBOR plus. The question is, plus is 20 basis point, 30 basis point, flexible. I don't know. I don't get into the macroeconomic side of the story. There are lots and lots of people. I get into this kind of stuff. Technical detail, technical assistance, technical projects, and I stay away from the economics. But I learned a lot from those economists. You must monetize everything. Otherwise, finance minister will not give you time of the day. Unless there is an exciting question, he is going to close the thing.
Yes.
Oh, no, here, this lady wants.
Last question, okay. You choose. Last question.
No, lady, because she has been patiently waiting.
Okay. This is the rare response. Okay, last two. Such an
Sir, I have 3 questions. First is like how much World Bank... They are short questions.
Say smart people in this room. Okay, one at a time, otherwise I'll forget.
Okay. So my first question is like how much World Bank spends for research? How much World Bank spends for research and development and innovation, besides education, learning, and what you say, knowledge and all?
I don't have a number. I have to ask ChatGPT, but that
Just,
would be very good.
just, I mean,
but
guess.
approximately a lot of money.
Okay.
My first 5 years at the World Bank, I didn't do projects. I do only technical assistance.
Okay.
Millions and millions of dollars. And if the World Bank doesn't give it to me, I go to Norway, I go to Netherlands, I go to Japan, and saying, paisa lao, I want to do this. And as long as you have a good idea, they will never stop you. So the money is never the issue. Ideas are the issues. Go ahead, next
So they
question.
spend a lot of money on what is innovation and all.
Yes.
Okay. Second question is like, to whom World Bank is accountable?
To whom?
Yeah.
The people who are members.
Okay.
190 bosses. I have 190 bosses on top of me. They used to sit on the top floor. They don't like something, they will pick up the phone and saying, Mr. Jitu Shah, show up. I have a question. I remember a country, one of our neighboring country. I stopped the loan. I said, you are not fulfilling the social conditions. Loan gone. Next day, I get the call from the executive director. You took my money. I said, no, sir, I didn't take your money. You didn't fulfill the conditions.
Okay, there's a reason World Bank cannot be sued.
Huh?
There's a reason World Bank cannot be sued because it's not accountable to an external party.
No, the World Bank is accountable to all the owners
Okay.
of the World Bank. So there is an internal mechanism, number one. Number two, there is that we talked about, right? The inspection panel. Similar at ADB. There are internal accountability mechanisms that are very powerful, much better than our court system. Trust me, these things get resolved like this. If it goes to our court, it will be 10, 20, 30 years. Last question.
Okay, sir, in brief, can you explain, I didn't understood this, like legal conditionality. What exactly is legal conditionality like?
Okay, I'll give you one example, okay?
Okay.
But there are lots of them. Or two, just so the two different ones. When we had a loan with Thailand, we said, okay, we will give you this much money, but you need to reform your power sector. What does it mean? You're not getting enough money from the public. Your production cost is 6 cents a megawatt hour in US terms, and you're only charging them 4. You're losing 2. You're bleeding. We will not give you money if you bleed like this. So please, don't raise it all at once. 4, 4.2, 4.3, 4.5, but you got to get your money out. Unless you can make it cheaper. That's it. Enough questions from you.
So it is standard or it is flexible, like?
Huh?
This conditionality is standard or is flexible?
No, flexible. We design. We are
Okay.
human beings. So, if I have some thought, I'll do it. Some other lawyers will do some other one. Okay, Anil Dani.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Okay.
You mentioned somewhere in between that led into South Korea in 1990. Looking at South Korea's economic growth, they are on one year. Why doesn't it replicate? Why don't you? Is the World Bank in a position to replicate that in other countries?
First of all, World Bank doesn't implement project.
Yeah. Okay.
That's the problem. That's it. One sentence. World Bank doesn't implement the projects. Countries do. So if the country like India wants to develop like this, World Bank will come with a shovel full of money. Just prove it to me that you're going to do it that way.
Has World Bank blacklisted any country as
Yes. Yes. And generally speaking, people default. For example, North Korea right now or Myanmar in between, they do default. But eventually, when they want to come in the world economy, the World Bank says, hey, money pending. So they do default, but it's generally small countries, and they all come back. Hopefully.
Okay. Thank you, Jitu Bhai. Thank you very much. Just take 1 minute to express my... I'm sorry, gentlemen, we have crossed our time limit.
Ask me afterwards.
So we have to respect everybody's time. So I'll just take half a minute for expressing our gratitude. I'm sure this complicated topic was explained very lucidly by Jitu Bhai. So big round of applause for him. And I'm sure a lot of basic but very interesting things came out of this presentation which I did not even expect. So this was very nice, and thank you very much for sharing your thoughts in a very, very simple way, and your you know, the way you instantly answered the questions. It was a very nice tale. And thank you, friends, for your participation. This talk was very appropriate on the World Earth Day today, where AMA is having a lot of programs. You must have seen a lot of people today. So thank you very much, and keep coming to AMA. Jitubai, thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Yeah.